Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We're just going to give a minute or so as people get logged on, and we'll get started. Seeing a couple people join. All right. Well, I think we can get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Luis Montes. I'm an outreach specialist with Ascent. We are supporting the city of Bakersfield on SOAR, Sustainable Opportunities, Advancing Resilience Bakersfield. And I'm excited to welcome you all to today's workshop. It's our first workshop in this planning process. And I'm excited to spend the next hour and a half with you all. So I will get us started by first handing it off to Giovanna, who is our Spanish language interpreter for this meeting. She will be providing Spanish interpretation services for Spanish speakers who are on the call today. And I'll hand it off to her to provide some directions in both English and Spanish on how to access the Spanish channel. And Giovanna, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. In order to provide language access, this meeting will have simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish. Please note that a translation globe will not appear until after I read through all language instructions. If you are bilingual, you do not have to click anything. If you're not bilingual, you will have to select the language that you speak in order to hear the interpretation. If you're on a laptop or a desktop, you will see a globe at the bottom right of your screen. Please click on the globe icon that says interpretation and select English. If you're on an iPad or a similar device, locate the three-dot menu on the upper right and select language interpretation and then select English. When it's your turn to speak, please remember to be loud and clear and speak at a moderate pace as the interpreter will be interpreting simultaneously into the other language. Buenas noches a todos. Esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea bidireccional del inglés al español. El globo de traducción no va a aparecer hasta que haya leído las instrucciones en los dos idiomas. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que presionar nada. Si usted no es bilingüe, tendrá que elegir su idioma para escuchar la interpretación. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice interpretación. Haga clic ahí y seleccione español. Si está usando un iPad o teléfono, localice el menú de 3 puntos que aparece arriba a la derecha. Haga clic en interpretación de idiomas y elija español. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, por favor recuerde hablar con voz fuerte y clara y a un paso moderado, ya que la intérprete estará interpretando simultáneamente al otro idioma. Gracias. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And with that, we are going to begin the presentation. But actually, before I do that, I do want to make sure that everyone is orientated with Zoom functions. So I'm going to do a quick recap just to make sure we're all on the same page. There is a mute and unmute button in the bottom left-hand corner. Please select that to unmute yourself, but please stay on mute unless you are invited to speak. You can also start or stop your video. This turns on your camera or turns it off if needed. We do have the chat function open, so if you have any questions or comments, the chat is being monitored by staff, so we definitely encourage you to share questions or comments there, and we'll do our best to be responsive. There are also reactions. You could raise your hand if you have a question, but there are also some nonverbal reactions that might be helpful to help express sentiment during the presentation or just throughout the meeting. And then, of course, if you need to leave the meeting for any reason before it ends, you can select that in the bottom right-hand corner by selecting Leave Meeting. And with that, I am going to welcome the City of Bakersfield City Manager, Christian Clegg, for some quick welcome remarks. Christian, I'll hand it off to you.
Luis, and I'll welcome everyone that has joined us this evening. We're happy to have everybody with us. We wanted to broaden the feedback that we're receiving from the community on this topic. And just let me say a few things about this project. We at the City of Bakersfield, we do feel like it's important for us to really be thoughtful about our future, and that this planning around the topics of our SOAR project are important to us. We wanted to be able to take this on in a way that is specific to Bakersfield. We know that there are many national and state groups that are continuing to provide good data and analysis and planning around this subject matter. But we also wanted to go through a planning process that is specific and unique to Bakersfield. And we want to take into account that feedback and that good analysis. But we also want to take into account feedback from our community itself. And so we're very pleased to have folks with us today. As we go forward, you'll find out more about what we've already done to try and frame up this project, and that we have a stakeholder advisory group that we're involving, but we also want more community feedback that's a little bit more broad. And so we appreciate you participating. There'll be other opportunities to participate in the future as well. And to continue to just stay tuned about the project through some other tools and resources that we have. But we're glad that you're here with us to learn a little bit about it as a first blush, and then have a little bit of participation even today itself. So thank you again for joining, and I'll kick it back to Luis to continue through with the agenda and do some further introductions of our team.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. Now, moving forward, I do want to give a quick overview of today's agenda and what's to be expected. We'll start off with introductions. We'll do an overview of SOAR Bakersfield, discuss climate change and provide a quick overview on how it relates to mitigation and adaptation. We'll leave some space for Q&A, and then we'll have the remainder of the activity will be dedicated to a group activity, because we really want to hear from all of you. And finally, the last 5 minutes, we'll wrap up with next steps and closing comments. So before we start, I want to provide an opportunity to get an idea of who's joining us today. So in the chat, please share your name, affiliation, and favorite place in Bakersfield to get us started. And while you all are doing that, I'm going to run through our project team that is supporting this SOAR Bakersfield. So on the City of Bakersfield side, we have Christian Clegg, Rick Anthony, Bill Burns, Cassandra Katera, Kayla Hickey, Christina Goli, and Paula Soto. On the Ascent side, supporting the City of Bakersfield on this effort, we have Poonam Baparai, Hannah Kornfeld, Andrew Beecher, myself, Natalie Kataoka, Adam Kwan, and Victoria Alatorre. And then, of course, we have Giovanna Wormsbeck supporting our Spanish interpretation channel. So seeing some activity, appreciate the responses. Now we'll get into the workshop overview. So the purpose of today is to learn about SOAR Bakersfield and its benefits. Here, we want to hear your ideas to help build a stronger, more resilient city, discuss local strengths, challenges, and solutions that are unique to Bakersfield, and get project updates and identify ways you all can continue to stay engaged and involved throughout this process. So I'll give a quick overview of the planning schedule. This is a year-long effort that kicked off in January with a project website launch. And we are currently in part 2 of the development process. So this is developing and identifying aspects of SOAR Bakersfield itself, with community workshop number 1 being a really important step in this process. There are a total of 3 workshops planned throughout the planning phase. This phase is expected to be a year long, as mentioned, with it ending at the end of the year. We anticipate draft SOAR Bakersfield being available in the fall, and then with final SOAR Bakersfield being presented to City Council in November or December in the winter time. So there will be more opportunities for engagement, and we definitely appreciate you engaging in this step. So SOAR Bakersfield, just to provide an overview. Again, it stands for Sustainable Opportunities Advancing Resilience. So what is it? It's a roadmap to reduce climate pollution. It's made possible and funded by the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. It identifies actions for economic growth and cost savings. An important piece is that it prioritizes local needs and integrates community priorities, which is why we're here today to try to identify some of those local needs and community priorities that are important to all of you. It engages all populations, especially underserved communities, and ensures equitable benefits for everyone. So moving on, we do have some Slido questions that are sprinkled throughout this presentation. The intention is to encourage engagement throughout while we present on this topic. We encourage you all to join. To do so, you can do it by scanning the QR code with your phone, and this will direct you to the Slido questions that will be presented. Another way to participate is by typing slido.com into your web browser, and you'll see the option to enter a number, and there you will enter 2826229, and that will also connect you to the Slido questions that will be presented. We definitely understand that people may not be comfortable using Slido, and that's okay. That's why we have the chat function open. So if you can also share your responses to some of these questions within the chat to ensure that we still capture that information. Now, we're going to test this out with a question on the next slide. And this question is, how likely do you think it is that climate change will affect the health and safety of you, your household, and or your loved ones? And you'll see the English and Spanish next to each other. This is to ensure that our Spanish speakers on the call also can also engage. Seeing some activity, 7 people have responded so far. Seeing very likely and somewhat likely as the top responses. I'll give it 30 seconds or so, just as people kind of get comfortable with Slido. On all questions, there will be the QR code where you will be able to access if you're joining later. I'll give it a few seconds or so. All right. Well, seeing very likely as the top choice with a few folks selecting the others as well. Now we're going to get into the topic of climate change a little bit better. And specifically looking at mitigation and adaptation. But before I do that, I do want to make sure I provide some definitions just to make sure we're all caught up on what resilience, adaptation, mitigation means. So resilience, this is the R in SOAR Bakersfield. This is capacity to withstand, recover from, and thrive through climate hazards while preserving core services and functions. Now, adaptation, these are actions, the actions taken to adjust systems and behaviors to better handle current and future hazards while maintaining essential functions. So the actions to improve resilience. And then mitigation is a little bit different. These are actions taken to reduce emissions or climate pollutants to slow down climate change. And I'm going to show a graphic and kind of jump into these definitions a little bit more. So on the left-hand side, we have communities that emit pollutants. These are through cars, industrial uses, and energy use. These gases trap heat and in turn raise global temperatures. And this cycle drives climate change and worldwide. So mitigation, which we see right next, defined right next to on the left-hand side, this aims to reduce emissions at their sources through local actions. And examples of actions include renewable energy, electric vehicles, energy efficient appliances, and accessible public transit to reduce emissions. These efforts prevent future climate impacts by, again, reducing pollutants at the local source. Now, on the right-hand side, that addresses adaptation and shows how adaptation works. So Adaptation addresses unavoidable climate impacts already occurring, and this includes extreme heat, flooding, and drought, and those impacts on communities. Examples of adaptation include flood defenses, improved emergency responses, resilient buildings, or tree canopy cover to reduce heat. These efforts help communities withstand and recover from these impacts. Now, communities are already experiencing some of these impacts and changes to local weather patterns through extreme weather, through flooding, droughts, and sea level rise. These all threaten communities, infrastructure, and ecosystems, which are negatively impacted by some of these. So, looking holistically at this, both strategies are essential and complementary. Mitigation tackles the cause, while adaptation tackles and manages the consequences. This combined effort creates a more resilient city. Now, to jump into adaptation a little bit more, I'm going to provide some definitions on climate stressors, climate hazards, and climate impacts. And then in the following slides, I'll provide some additional information on how this relates to the city of Bakersfield itself. But first, I want to provide some definitions. So we have climate stressors. These are long-term climate trends like rising temperatures or changing rainfall patterns that put pressure on communities. Then we have climate hazards, a potentially damaging weather or climate-related event that can affect community health, safety, infrastructure, and economic stability. And then under that, we have climate impacts. And these are the specific effects that climate hazards have on our community, such as property damage or health problems or business disruptions. So to kind of streamline this a little bit, climate stressors like rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns increase the likelihood of climate hazards such as flooding, which create climate impacts on communities. And this includes property damage, health risk, and economic disruptions. So I'm going to walk us through what this looks like specifically for Bakersfield by starting with climate stressors. So these climate stressors, these are the trends in the long run that the city of Bakersfield is anticipated or projected to experience. So we'll start by looking at temperature changes. Historically, data shows that between 1961 and 1990, Bakersfield's annual average temperature was 78.4 degrees Fahrenheit. By 2070 to 2099, this is projected to increase to between 83.2 and 86.2 degrees Fahrenheit. This represents a warming of 4.8 to 7.8 over the century. Now, there are other metrics to measure temperature, one of them being extreme heat days. So an extreme heat day is defined as over 106.6 degrees. And historically, Bakersfield has experienced only 4.2 extreme heat days annually. Future projections show a dramatic increase to about 25.4 and 46.8 extreme heat days per year. So this means that residents could likely face potential dangerous heat conditions for up to 1.5 months by the end of the century. Now, let's look at precipitation patterns and what those projections are anticipated to be. Now, annual average precipitation won't actually change dramatically. However, what will change is year-to-year variability. And what that means is wet years will become wetter and dry years will become drier. And this variability can make planning for water resources much more challenging. So SOAR Bakersfield and the planning implications are that climate action strategies will be essential to manage increased heat and precipitation variability. Planning now will help protect vulnerable populations, infrastructure, and resources. So that's climate stressors. Now we'll jump into climate hazards and some of those climate impacts. So the city had conducted a vulnerability assessment in 2021 and 2022, and identified 5 climate hazards that impacted the city of Bakersfield. And you may be able to reflect on some of these or have experienced this firsthand. The 5 are extreme heat, extreme precipitation and flooding, wildfire, drought, and poor air quality. And all 5 of these can result in negative impacts to essential components to a city's structure. And these include public health, vulnerable populations, local economy, biodiversity, infrastructure, and natural resources, amongst all the others that are also mentioned here. So I'm going to transition us to a Slido question where we want to know which of the following hazards do you find most concerning? Of the 5 that were just mentioned, which do you find most concerning? And I fully recognize that there may be more than one to you that that is concerning, but for the purpose of this question, we ask you to select one. Seeing some activity, I'll give it a minute or so. All right, so it's definitely still some activity going. Appreciate all the responses. It looks like poor air quality is at the top amongst this group, with extreme heat as a close second, and of course, wildfire and extreme precipitation also being on our minds. So appreciate that input, and again, fully recognize that there may be more than one that we are concerned about, but I appreciate you all for selecting one. Now we're going to jump into the community visioning portion of this, where we really want to start getting an idea of what you want to see represented in SOAR Bakersfield and what's important to you. So I'll start off with another Slido question, and this one is a word cloud. So in 1 to 2 words, what does a thriving Bakersfield look like to you in 20 years? So let's forward think and think in the next 20 years, what do you want to see? It can be green infrastructure, walkable neighborhoods, public transportation, clean energy, all very valid examples. So what, in 1 to 2 or so words, what does a thriving Bakersfield look like to you? And I encourage you all you're welcome to submit more than one if you have multiple ideas. Definitely want to get an idea of, what you envision for Bakersfield. Yeah, seeing clean air as a common theme. Seeing agriculture, public transit, just general improvement of quality of life, some active transportation infrastructure, some community events and connectivity, some innovation with flying cars. All right, well, I think we got a pretty good list here, so appreciate everyone for tuning in. Looks like there's a couple people typing. Well, I'll give it about 20 more seconds. All right, I will move us on. So these are all, some of these are potential opportunities that can be integrated into SOAR Bakersfield. So moving forward, SOAR Bakersfield is an important process because it will identify opportunities for climate strategies that align with local needs and priorities without committing to specific targets or metrics. So let's see what outcomes you want to see in SOAR Bakersfield. And we figured we just ask the question, which possible outcomes of SOAR Bakersfield are most important to you? And there are quite a few to choose from, but there is another option. We encourage you to select up to 3. If you select other, type in that idea into the chat so we can make sure we capture it. All right, seeing a little bit of all. With lower energy costs being slightly at the top, followed by clean air quality and more trees and parks, which are tied up. It looks like there's still some movement. So appreciate all the feedback. Oops. Now I am gonna, these are what is mentioned here as these are all opportunities that exist within SOAR Bakersfield that are possible to integrate into this plan. So I'm gonna lead us into providing some additional ideas on opportunities. And this will lead into our small group activity, which we're going to ask you directly what you want to see even further. And we'll want to pull some details out of that. But before I do that, I'm actually going to break down the SOAR Bakersfield acronym. So we have sustainable, we have opportunities, and we have advancing resilience. And I'll provide some additional context into all of those. So S stands for sustainable. So what are sustainable opportunities that exist? These are efforts supporting a healthy future by reducing emissions using resources wisely and strengthening core industries. And here are some examples of how that might look. Maybe green job training and ensuring that there are green jobs available to within the workforce, or energy efficient upgrades and ensuring those are accessible to reduce energy use. Um, Also ensuring there's water saving infrastructure and efforts to protect our water sources to ensure that we're sustainable with how we use resources every day. So those are some examples of sustainable opportunities that exist. Now, the O, these are opportunities, but we're going to talk about economic and community opportunities these are creating pathways for economic growth and community benefits that improve quality of life for everyone in Bakersfield. And there are a number of ways that this could look like. One of them being better connected communities. So ensuring that neighborhoods are connected to their jobs, or that neighborhoods are connected to city centers to promote that connectivity. or perhaps community collaboration. There are a number of nonprofits, community leaders, and resources that provide services to the Bakersfield community. So how can we increase that cohesion and collaboration through SOAR Bakersfield to better service and better provide resources to residents? And then finally, we have AR, Advancing Resilience. And this is preparing our community to succeed through future climate challenges while protecting our residents, businesses, and infrastructure. And again, this can also look a number of different ways. One of them being supporting businesses and ensuring that they have the resources to be resilient. This could be either through efforts to increase preparedness or to efforts to promote recovery in the event that that is needed. Maybe it looks like increased tree canopy cover, which provides more shade and in turn reduces heat, or ensuring that local hazard response is well thought out and planned in the event that there is an evacuation that is needed, or just ensuring that local hazard response is coordinated. So these are some examples that relate to advancing resilience that can be integrated into SOAR Bakersfield. And in the upcoming group activity that will begin after Q&A, we're going to ask you to really get specific and dive into some of these opportunities that you'd like to see so we can ensure that they're integrated. But before we do that, I do want to open it up for questions. You're welcome to share them in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you in the order that we see them.
Luis, our first question in the chat is, who is part of the stakeholder advisory group? I wonder if Christian or Rick can tell us a bit more about the makeup of the stakeholder advisory group.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Let me just pull up a reminder for me to help me remember all the folks that are on there. Our stakeholder advisory group has representatives that are from many of our stakeholder groups that are sort of our typical, business partners and community partners. But then we also wanted to include several community groups that would have representatives that could speak on behalf of community. And so we have included of course, in this topic, importantly, and it was part of the EPA grant expectations, that we involve our local air districts. So we have the San Joaquin Valley Air District, we have the Kern Council of Governments, we have representation from our Chamber of Commerce. We also have the Home Builders Association, the Realtors Association. We have folks from our energy industry. We have both Kern Energy as well as the Western States Petroleum Association. But then on the community side, we have Building Healthy Communities, Blue Zones. We have the Kern Community College District, Community Action Partnership of Kern. We also invited Hispanic Chamber and Black Chamber specifically to try and get broader representation outside of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber. And then we have CSUB also having a representative on the stakeholder advisory group. One of the reasons that we wanted to have community workshops like this is to have a broader representation, because we know any stakeholder advisory group is going to be limited. And we had to have a size of group that would be manageable and getting some of that feedback and advice. And ultimately, this is going to be the community's plan, the city's plan, as adopted by city leadership and city officials. But we are going to continue to have as much community feedback as we can, just knowing that advisory group plays an important role, but is not going to be fully representative of all the community's interests.
And Christian, if I can just add this, if there's anyone that feels strongly that they wanted to um, participate on a different level, please reach out to me directly, and we're certainly happy to involve you further into this plan.
Good suggestion, Rick.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised or questions in the chat at this time.
All right, then I think we can move on. If there are no chats, I'm sorry, no questions, we can move on to the group activity portion. If anything comes up now or after the meeting, well, if anything comes up during the meeting, please use the chat. If anything comes after the meeting, we'll provide ways on how you can connect with the project team. So now I will transition us to the part where we want to hear from all of you. And this is really important to ensuring that SOAR Bakersfield reflects your priorities. So we've designed a group activity, and I am going to provide some additional context on what that group activity is. So there's two parts to this group activity. It'll be 40 minutes long, part one being 20 minutes and part two being 20 minutes as well. The first part, we will discuss community opportunities you would like to see reflected in SOAR Bakersfield, and we have designed a number of questions to help kind of get the ideas flowing. And then part two, you will actually enter those opportunities into the SOAR Bakersfield Digital Engagement Hub map activity. And this map activity is stationed on our project website. And is intended to pinpoint exactly where you would like to see some of these opportunities exist. So I'll provide some additional direction, but just want to provide some context on the breakout rooms. There will be one facilitator who will help lead discussion and ensure that everyone has an opportunity to share their ideas. There will also be a note taker to jot down ideas and ensure they are captured. And they'll also use that feedback to encourage you to put that in the map activity during part two. Participants may vary, around 7 to 10 participants, depending on how many participants we have here. But I am going to jump into part one, which is trying to identify what we all want to see represented in this plan. So there are some guiding questions. You're welcome to respond to one during your breakout room or all of them, however, whichever one speaks to you most. But I'll read through them. And the 5 questions are: what improvements would make Bakersfield a healthier, more livable city for everyone? What areas need better infrastructure, such as public transit, tree cover, or other investments to improve quality of life? Which areas in Bakersfield need the most attention regarding extreme weather impacts like heat, flooding, drought, or wildfire? What resources or opportunities would you like to see developed in Bakersfield? And finally, where do you see untapped potential in Bakersfield? Now, before I transition you all into the breakout groups, I want to provide some additional context on the map activity to make sure we're all caught up. Now, the map activity, like I've mentioned, allows you to highlight priorities or issues you'd like to see addressed or incorporated into city planning efforts. And there are a number of categories you can select from. And you saw a lot of these categories in previous slides. And you're going to see them again. And fortunately, within the map activity, you can see these definitions. So I'm just going to run through them just to provide some quick context on the types of opportunities that you can select within the map activity. The first one is climate hazards areas. So these are identifying locations prone to climate hazards like drought, extreme heat, flooding, and poor air quality. Transit improvement, so areas where improvements are needed for transit options or bike lanes, maybe walking paths or EV charging stations. There's a option for sharing water conservation ideas, so locations facing water challenges or where water-saving projects could make Bakersfield more drought resilient, in case you had ideas. Within the CAP, we can address food access, so feel free to identify areas with limited access to fresh foods, maybe potential sites for community gardens or grocery stores, or even farmers markets. Maybe there are some air quality concerns, so help us identify neighborhoods with air quality issues and opportunities for clean air solutions, especially in vulnerable areas. There's also an option category for energy upgrade needs. So help us identify areas where affordable cooling solutions, energy upgrades, and building improvements are necessary. And the last three are nature opportunities. So these are potential areas to increase urban forests, trees, and healthy landscapes that promote biodiversity. Additionally, there's workforce support to identify green training job programs or clean energy employment opportunities, or just potential sites for economic development that can exist within Bakersfield. And we definitely understand that, there might be ideas outside of what was just mentioned. So we do have another category, and this is intended to capture additional concerns, ideas, or resources that should also be flagged for consideration. So these are 9 categories within the MAP activity that we want some help identifying throughout Bakersfield, so we can incorporate that feedback into this planning process. Now, you all will be accessing the project website, so if for some reason there is some additional time, which is totally okay, there are other ways to engage besides the MAP activity. So if you wrap up early on the MAP activity, there's a community survey, there are vision boards and community recognition activities on the Digital Engagement Hub. You can explore the social media toolkit and share that with your network. You can sign up to stay engaged, or you can download the one-page fact sheet in case you'd like to learn more and share that with your network as well. But definitely lean on your facilitator. If you have questions, they will be able to guide you through part 1 and part 2. And should you have extra time, they are more than happy to guide you through some of the other activities that exist on the project website. So before we open up the breakout rooms, I do want to go through some ground rules for this activity, just to set a foundation. And I encourage everyone to be here now, one speaker at a time. Step up to voice your thoughts. Step back to let others speak. Be additive, not repetitive. Listen actively, seek to understand, keep an open mind, and help keep the facilitator on time. I'll be sending out a broadcast message throughout the activity just to make sure we are all on track. But generally, it'll take around 40 minutes to get through everything. That may feel like a lot, but I promise that after engaging and talking, it'll fly by. So I think with that, we should be ready to open up the breakout rooms. All right, so next steps moving forward after this workshop. There are still a couple ways to engage. We do have the survey available on the project website, and we definitely encourage you all to take it and to encourage others to take it as well within your network. Continue to explore that digital engagement hub. There are other ways to engage. We're hoping that this is an opportunity to engage in ways that are a little bit less traditional. We want to get creative with how we get feedback. So this is the Digital Engagement Hub is an easy way to, again, share with your network and ask them to participate as well. Some questions did come up, and if there are questions that remain, we encourage you to email soar@bakersfieldcity.us. Again, that's soar@bakersfieldcity.us. We have a team of us responding to questions, and we'll make sure your question gets answered. And if you want, I believe everyone has received the link to the project website, but you can scan this QR code if you'd like to access the project website. We'll be following up with the slide deck. We'll be following up with the project website and all these other avenues for engagement. And we look forward to continued engagement from you all as we anticipate future workshops to continue this planning process. So thank you for joining us in this step, and we appreciate you all.
And stay tuned for the next workshop. The date is not set yet, but we expect it to be in the next 2 months or so. So make sure you're signed up for our information so that on the project website, so that you'll get notified as soon as that is available. Have a great rest of your evening. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.